I was 20 years old, fresh out of college, standing at that bus stop in our tiny Vermont town. The autumn leaves were swirling like angry ghosts, and the rain was coming down so hard it felt like bullets against my thin coat. I was shivering, soaked to the bone, when this navy blue pickup truck pulled up right in front of me. The window rolled down, and I saw the most beautiful blue eyes I'd ever seen in my life. This young man, probably my age, dressed in a crisp suit despite the weather, smiled at me with such warmth that my heart skipped a beat. "Please don't take this the wrong way," he said, his voice gentle as summer rain. "I'm a recent graduate too. You're going to catch pneumonia out here. Would you let me give you a safe ride somewhere?" No, my mother had always warned me about strangers, but there was something in Clarence's eyes that made me feel like I'd known him my whole life. The sincerity there was unmistakable. So I said yes, and climbed into that truck. As we drove through those winding Vermont roads, I discovered that Clarence loved Dean Martin's "That's Amore," missed his grandmother's cinnamon cookies, something fierce, and always carried this pristine white silk handkerchief in his pocket. It looked like it belonged to another era, so elegant and refined. When the rain got worse, Clarence insisted on driving me all the way home. "Ruth, please let me take you to your door. No woman should be alone in weather like this," he said, and my heart was racing so fast I thought he might hear it. We talked like we'd known each other for years as he carefully navigated those deadly curves. When we finally reached my house, we exchanged phone numbers, writing them carefully on little scraps of paper. As I was getting out of the truck, Clarence called my name. "Ruth, wait." He was fumbling with something, and when I turned back, I saw him trying to get that beautiful white handkerchief out of his pocket. But it had gotten caught on something inside his jacket, and he was struggling with it. "Take care of yourself," he said finally, giving up on the handkerchief and flashing me that gorgeous smile instead. "I'll call you tomorrow." I watched him back down that deadly driveway, my heart full of hope and possibility. Then I went inside, took a hot shower, and waited for tomorrow to come. But tomorrow brought a phone call that shattered my world. A woman answered when I dialed Clarence's number the next evening, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "I'm Clarence's mother," she managed to say through her tears. "My son is dead. He died in a car accident." The world collapsed around me right there in my kitchen. She told me that just 10 minutes after he'd dropped me off, Clarence lost control on that same icy hill. His truck slid sideways, flipped 3 times, and crashed into a massive oak tree. He died on impact. If only he hadn't driven up that horrible road, I whispered into that phone, my voice breaking. If I had just walked from Main Street like I suggested. It's my fault. It's all my fault. I got his mother's address and went to pay my respects the very next day. Their house felt like a tomb, heavy with grief that seemed to press against my chest. Mrs. Henderson told me about Clarence's kindness, how he helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, how he volunteered at the church every Sunday. She cried as she spoke, and I cried with her, knowing that her beautiful son died because of my selfishness. I got his mother's address and went to pay my respects. Their house felt like a tomb. Mrs. Henderson told me about Clarence's kindness, how he helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, how he volunteered at the church every Sunday. She cried as she spoke, and I cried with her. When I was leaving, I asked if I could have something to remember Clarence by. "I truly cared for your son," I told her, my voice breaking. "Is there anything, maybe something small?" She looked at me with those same kind eyes that Clarence had, eyes now red with endless tears. "Wait here, dear," she said softly. She went inside and came back with something wrapped in tissue paper. When she unfolded it, my blood turned to ice. It was a white silk handkerchief, the same one I'd noticed in his pocket. But it wasn't white anymore. It was stained deep red with his blood from the accident. "I found this in his jacket pocket," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The paramedics gave me his personal effects. This was clutched in his hand when they found him. He must have pulled it out when the truck started sliding, maybe trying to wipe his eyes, see the road better." The image hit me like a physical blow. Clarence, terrified and fighting for control of that truck on the icy road I had led him to, reaching for his grandmother's handkerchief in his final moments. I started shaking so violently that Mrs. Henderson had to steady me. "I shouldn't have asked," I whispered, staring at the blood-soaked fabric. "I can't take this." But she pressed it into my trembling hands. "Please," she said, tears flowing down her cheeks. "Clarence would want you to have it. He was so excited about meeting you. He called me that night, you know, right after he dropped you off. Said he'd met the most wonderful girl, that he was going to call you the next day. This handkerchief was his grandmother's gift to him. She said it would bring him luck and love." I took that bloody handkerchief home, and that night I cried until I had no tears left. Then I decided I had to clean it. I couldn't bear seeing Clarence's blood, knowing it was there because he died trying to keep me safe. I used the hottest water, the strongest soap, scrubbed it until my hands were raw. When I was done, it was perfect again, white as fresh snow, soft as a cloud. I put it under my pillow that night, imagining I could still smell Clarence's cologne on it. For a few hours, I slept peacefully for the first time since the accident. But when I woke up the next morning and lifted my pillow, that handkerchief was blood red again. I screamed so loud my neighbors came running. I must not have cleaned it properly, I told myself, trying to stay rational. So I washed it again, even more thoroughly this time. I soaked it, scrubbed it, rinsed it over and over until the water ran completely clear. Again, it was perfectly white when I finished. Again, it was covered in blood the next morning. This went on for a week. Every night I'd wash that handkerchief until it was pristine. Every morning I'd find it soaked in fresh blood. I was losing my mind. Finally, I ran to our town priest, Father Amos. In the dim light of his study, I told him everything, about meeting Clarence, about the accident, about the handkerchief that wouldn't stay clean no matter how hard I scrubbed it. Father Amos listened to every word, then he prayed over me for a long time. When he finished, he looked into my eyes and asked, "Ruth, my child, what did you wash that handkerchief with?" "Soap and hot water," I sobbed. "I washed it twice, Father. It was completely clean, but every morning it's bloody again." The old priest's eyes filled with tears. "Ruth," he said in a voice that trembled with emotion, "the blood on that handkerchief isn't Clarence's blood. It's the blood of your guilty heart. You can't wash away guilt with soap and water. Only forgiveness can make it clean." I collapsed to my knees right there on his office floor, sobbing until I thought my heart would break. Father Amos's words whispered that Clarence's death wasn't my fault. But my heart was still shattered into a million pieces. I put that handkerchief in a wooden box and never opened it again. I moved away from Vermont, got married, had children, built a whole life. But every October, when the rain falls and the leaves turn, I remember that navy blue pickup truck, those beautiful blue eyes, and the smell of that handkerchief. 65 years have passed, and I'm 85 years old now. My husband died 3 years ago. My children live far away. And most nights I sit alone in this house, thinking about that autumn evening when my selfishness killed a good man. My niece visited me this past summer, and when she saw how this memory still bleeds through my days, she told me about people sharing their stories online. "Aunt Ruth," she said, "maybe telling your story will finally give you peace. It took me months to make this decision, but here I am, confessing to strangers what I've never been able to forgive myself for." Last month, I finally opened that box again. The handkerchief was still there, and after all these years, it was still stained with blood. Fresh blood, as red as the day Mrs. Henderson gave it to me in 1960. I know what you're thinking. You think I'm a crazy old woman, that grief and guilt have made me imagine things. But I'm telling you the truth. That handkerchief has been bleeding for 65 years, and I know it will keep bleeding until the day I die. Some nights, when the wind howls through these old windows, I swear I can hear Clarence calling my name. Sometimes I see that navy blue truck in my peripheral vision, just for a split second before it disappears. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months left. Cancer, spreading fast through these old bones. But you know what? I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of what comes after. Because I know that when I close my eyes for the last time, I'll have to face Clarence. I'll have to look into those beautiful blue eyes and explain why my selfish need for safety cost him his life. I'll have to tell him why I've carried his bloody handkerchief all these years like some twisted shrine to my guilt. Maybe some of you watching this will say, I should have forgiven myself years ago. Maybe you'll say it was just an accident, that I couldn't have known what would happen, but you weren't there. You didn't see the joy in his eyes when he offered me that ride. You didn't feel the weight of knowing that a good man died because he wanted to keep you safe from a little rain and cold. I've lived with this secret for 65 years, carrying it through marriage, through raising my children, through burying my husband. Every October, when the leaves turn and the rain starts to fall, I'm back in that truck with Clarence, making the decision that would end his life. Every anniversary of that terrible night, I take out that blood-soaked handkerchief, and I remember. Do you know what the worst part is? 3 months after Clarence died, I met Robert at a church social. Robert became my husband, the father of my children, my companion for 50 years. He was a good man, a kind man, who loved me completely. But even on our wedding day, even when my babies were born, even during our happiest moments, part of me was still in that truck with Clarence, wishing I had been brave enough to walk home alone. Robert knew something haunted me, but I could never tell him. How do you explain to the man you married that you killed someone with your cowardice? How do you share a bed with someone when you're carrying the blood of another man on your conscience? I loved Robert, truly I did, but Clarence's ghost was always there between us, invisible but present. When Robert got sick with Alzheimer's, in his confused moments, he would sometimes ask me, Ruth, who is Clarence? You call his name in your sleep. Even then, I couldn't tell him the truth. I took that secret with me to Robert's funeral 3 years ago, and now I'm the only one left who knows what really happened that night. The truth is, we all carry invisible wounds from moments when life changed forever. We all have memories that bleed through the years, staining our hearts in ways that soap and water can never clean. Maybe you've lost someone you cared about. Maybe you've made a decision that haunts you. Maybe you've carried guilt that feels too heavy to bear. Maybe you've experienced something that defied all logic and reason. But here's what I've learned in my 85 years. Some wounds never heal. Some guilt never lifts, and some handkerchiefs never stop bleeding. That doesn't mean we stop living. It just means we learn to live with the weight of our choices. Every day for 65 years, I've carried Clarence with me. In some strange way, keeping his memory alive, keeping his blood on that handkerchief fresh and red, has been my way of honoring him. I never got to love Clarence the way I wanted to. I never got to hear him laugh at Dean Martin's songs or taste his grandmother's cinnamon cookies. I never got to hold his hand or kiss his lips or build a life with those kind blue eyes watching over me. But I've loved his memory every single day since October 1960. That bloody handkerchief has been my wedding ring to a ghost. My promise to never forget the price of my selfishness. If my story has touched something deep in your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Share your own moment when everything changed, when one decision altered the course of your entire life. Sometimes the heaviest burdens become lighter when we realize we're not carrying them alone. Do you have your own haunted handkerchief? Your own moment when fear or selfishness or cowardice cost someone else dearly? Tell me about it. I've been alone with this guilt for 65 years, and I promise you, there's something powerful about speaking your truth out loud, even to strangers on the internet. And if you believe there are more stories like mine out there, stories that people have kept locked in their hearts for decades, please subscribe to this channel. There are others who need to speak their truth, who need to know that someone will listen without judgment, who need to unburden themselves before time runs out. Hit that notification bell because every story shared here is a step toward healing, a way of honoring the people we've loved and lost, and a reminder that even in our darkest moments, even when we've done terrible things out of fear or weakness, we are not alone in our humanity.